What are the impediments of disposing the huge quantities of discarded solid waste which are continuously being generated? That's the first part of the question. Note the part, it says, what are the impediments in disposing? Okay. The second is, how do we remove safely the toxic wastes that have been accumulating in our habitable environment? So first is about impediments. And then we have to talk about how to remove. I noted one fact in this question, that the word India was not mentioned. So if the word India is not mentioned, then this question has to be at a global level. You can't be talking about, India only when you're writing this answer, because the word India is nowhere mentioned. So they're expecting you to write a global answer. And in that context, I started by the increasing amount of discarded solid waste in the world. So I had some data which I had taken up from the United Nations Environment Program website, UNEP. I quoted the data for the huge quantity of solid waste being generated. And this was just actually, trying to agree with the question, trying to agree that yes, we recognize that the solid waste is increasing. And then after this, mentioning this in the introduction, giving the data. Then I moved on to the impediments. What are the impediments in disposing? So first of all, mentioning the metric tons of waste that's generated, and then impediments in disposing. First impediment that was coming to my mind at that moment, that the waste is all, mixed up. Separation of waste at source is not there. So I think that could be the first which came to my mind. Mixed up waste. Especially in the context of solid waste. All the waste is mixed up and we don't know what's happening. So that's the first one. Secondly, lack of adequate technology or trained manpower. And lack of resource allocation by the government. Recently in the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, we are paying attention to it. But in general, in countries, we can't say that the government is, putting all the resources in this direction. So lack of government resources is also one point here. I tried to list out some impediments that were coming to my mind in the first part of the answer. And then I moved on, and I felt the second part was also equally, and if not more, equally important. How do we remove safely the toxic waste that have been accumulating? Note the word toxic. They are not asking you how to remove the solid waste, but the toxic waste. So amongst the solid waste, whatever toxic waste which is there, how do we remove that? Maybe that is the question. So when I was thinking about toxic waste, I thought about medical waste is toxic, which is coming from the hospitals, that is toxic. Then suppose we have syringes, cottons, all of that. Biomedical waste is toxic. Then you have glass, and then you have heavy metals, molybdenum or cadmium coming from sulfur acid batteries. So these could be really toxic for the environment. How to remove? I then mentioned the specific examples from India. See, I had given an overall brief idea of in the world, but now I just tried to orient my answer a little bit towards India, because we are studying for our country also. So I tried to mention how in India we had recently drafted the biomedical waste policy, the policy which tells us how we have to treat that waste, then about glass, then about metals. I just tried to give a brief idea of any waste which I felt is toxic in nature. And in the conclusion, I adequately concluded this answer by actually mentioning that this waste is leading to pollution, leading to degradation of environment, and then I connected this to the Sustainable Development Goal, that if we need to actually achieve SDG, we need to be taking care of the pollution aspects.